Every single day, over 140,000 vehicles roll through Provo on I-15 alone. Line them up bumper to bumper, and you'd have a traffic jam stretching more than 500 miles, farther than the drive from Provo to Denver and back again. That kind of non-stop motion needs fuel, and it needs water, and Provo's pipes are working overtime just to keep up. Behind every faucet, shower, and sprinkler in this city, there's a river's worth of water on the move. Provo pulls in about 20 million gallons of water a day for its homes and businesses, enough to fill roughly 30 Olympic swimming pools every single day, just to keep the taps running. And once that water's been used, it doesn't just vanish. It heads straight to the city's reclamation plant. Provo's water reclamation facility processes about 16 million gallons of wastewater every day. Close to 24 Olympic pools worth flowing through the treatment tanks, getting cleaned before it's released back into the watershed. Picture 24 swimming pools worth of used water, silently cycling through filters and clarifiers around the clock, every day of the year. Meanwhile, up on the hill, a different kind of flood is happening. Not water, but people. BYU alone pulls in about 35,000 students and staff onto its campus on a typical day. That's like packing a sold-out NBA arena and then filling a second one right next to it, just for one university's daily foot traffic. With that many people moving through campus, they need fuel of their own. And in a city not exactly famous for its coffee culture, the numbers get interesting fast. Provo's coffee shops serve up around 8,000 espresso drinks a day, enough to fill 500-gallon jugs with liquid caffeine, in a city where coffee is more the exception than the rule. And when the caffeine wears off, everybody still needs to eat, which is where Provo's restaurant scene really shows up big. Across the city, restaurants serve about 45,000 meals every single day. Enough to feed every single resident of Provo a full meal, all in one day, with the entire city's population accounted for. And some of that food starts a lot simpler than a restaurant plate. It starts as dough. And some of that food starts a lot simpler than a restaurant plate. It starts as dough. Provo's local bakeries turn out about 5,000 loaves a day, and if you stacked them all up crust to crust, you'd get a tower taller than a 10-story building rising right out of downtown. All that baking, brewing, and cooking runs on power, and that pulls us into the wires humming under the whole city. Provo Power delivers about 2.1 million kilowatt hours every single day, enough electricity to keep roughly 70,000 homes running for a full day. More households than actually exist in the city itself. Electricity's only half the story, though. A lot of Provo's homes are staying warm a different way entirely. Underneath the streets, natural gas lines are carrying about 450,000 therms a day into homes and businesses, enough to heat something like 6,000 houses through a Utah winter night. Let's actually drop a pin here for a second. Provo sits tucked against the Wasatch Range in Utah Valley, and everything we're counting is happening inside this one stretch of city between the mountains and Utah Lake. And keeping a city this size running also means dealing with what it throws away. Every day, Provo generates about 140 tons of solid waste, roughly 10 full garbage truckloads rumbling out of the city daily. But not all of it ends up in a landfill. Some of it gets a second life. Provo also recycles about 18 tons a day, which works out to something like 1,200 full recycling bins getting hauled off across the city. Getting all that trash and all those people around town takes transportation, and Provo runs on more than just cars. UTA buses and front-runner trains log about 6,000 boardings a day in the Provo area, which is like filling a 6,000-seat stadium with riders once, every single day, without a single empty seat. If you're enjoying this so far, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Speaking of stadiums, though, nothing in this city fills seats like fall Saturdays at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. When BYU football is in season, home games average around 45,000 fans in the stands. That's nearly half of Provo's entire population packed into one building, cheering at the same time. Compare that to almost anything else that happens here in a single day, and it barely comes close. Most daily numbers in this city top out in the thousands, and this one alone rivals the whole town showing up at once. And amid all those big civic numbers, life in Provo keeps arriving in much smaller, much quieter ways. At Utah Valley Hospital, one of the busiest birthing hospitals in the entire country, about 8 babies are born every single day. That's roughly one brand new resident of Provo arriving every 3 hours around the clock. New life arrives quietly. but plenty of Provo's other emergencies don't wait around. Over at Utah Valley Hospital, the ER doors don't really stop swinging. Provo's emergency room handles about 140 visits a day. That works out to roughly one person walking through those doors every 10 minutes, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And it's not just the ER staying busy. Across the whole city, dispatchers are fielding calls just as steadily. Provo police field about 250 calls for service every single day. That's a call coming in roughly every 6 minutes, somewhere in the city, someone dialing for help. Shift from emergencies to everyday mornings, and you'll find Provo's school system running like its own small city. Provo City School District enrolls about 17,000 students every school day, enough kids to fill up roughly 2 Vivint arenas side by side. And you can't run 17,000 kids through a school day without feeding them. The cafeterias are working overtime too. Between breakfast and lunch, Provo schools serve around 22,000 meals a day. That's enough trays lined up end to end to circle a football field several times over before the bell even rings for recess. Not every number in this city is about scale and speed, though. Some of Provo's daily activity is a lot quieter, happening between the shelves of the public library. Provo City Library sees about 1,800 visits and checkouts every single day. About the same crowd you'd get filling up 3 movie theaters at once, except here they're browsing shelves instead of watching a screen. I'd be curious how that compares to your own town. Take a guess at how many people visit your local library in a day, and drop where you're from in the comments. From quiet shelves to something a lot louder and faster, let's talk about what's fueling all those cars stuck on I-15. Provo burns through about 60,000 gallons of gasoline a day, enough to fill roughly 4,000 car tanks, which is basically every commuter in a several-mile radius topping off at once. And when people aren't behind the wheel, a lot of them are outside enjoying what Provo's actually known for. The city's parks pull in about 9,000 visits a day. Picture the combined crowd of 2 sold-out concerts, except instead of packed into an arena, they're spread out across baseball diamonds, picnic tables, and walking paths all over town. And sometimes, out in one of those parks or up in the mountains behind them, Provo residents are starting something even bigger than a picnic, a whole new life together. Between the city's courthouses and its LDS temple, Provo sees about 10 marriages performed every day. That's roughly 1 wedding every 2.5 hours. Somewhere in this city, someone's saying, "I do" right now. All that romance aside, this is still a city that runs on routine. And for a town not exactly famous for caffeine, Provo still needs its coffee fix. With Provo's coffee shops working through the morning rush, the city moves through about 8,000 espresso drinks a day. That's enough coffee to fill 500-gallon jugs, in a city where most of the population isn't even supposed to be drinking the stuff. Of course, not every call in this city is for a latte. Sometimes it's a real emergency. Provo fire and EMS crews are rolling out the door constantly, answering around 35 calls a day. That works out to roughly 1 emergency response every 40 minutes, day and night. Someone somewhere needs help right now. While the sirens are out there responding to today's emergencies, somewhere else in town, tomorrow's Provo is quite literally being built. The city issues about 4 building permits every single day. That's almost a brand new house or building breaking ground daily. Foundations being poured somewhere in Provo before you finish watching this video. And it's not just paperwork. Actual homes are rising out of the ground because of it. Zoom out from the construction site and look up, because Provo's real growth industry these days might be invisible, running through fiber lines under every one of those new houses. Between streaming, scrolling, and video calls, this city burns through about 1.2 petabytes of data every single day. That's the equivalent of streaming 600,000 hours of HD video, enough to keep every person in Provo watching movies nonstop for weeks without repeating one. And that's just the wired connections. Once you count phones untethered from any router, the numbers keep climbing. Provo's cell towers alone push through about 90 terabytes of mobile data every day. Roughly 20 million songs streamed, which is basically the entire population of Utah blasting music simultaneously and still not using it all up. Compare that mountain of data to the actual mountains ringing the valley, and Provo starts looking pretty good for it. Clear skies help. On an average day, the sun is out for about 8 hours here, basically a full workday's worth of sunshine, which is part of why people who move to Provo tend to stay outside more than they plan to. And with air that clean and skies that clear, it's no wonder the Provo River Trail stays busy. About 2,500 people use the trail every day: runners, cyclists, dog walkers, basically the population of a small town lacing up their shoes and hitting the same stretch of river path morning after morning. And that's Provo, a city of quiet mountains and loud data pipes, quick weddings and quicker fiber connections, all adding up day after day into numbers most people walking down Center Street never think twice about. If any of this surprised you, do us a favor and hit that like button. And if you want more cities broken down number by number, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. So what location do you want us to break down next? Drop it in the comments and we might just make it happen.